Good evening from Vietnam, Claire. Thanks a lot for joining our Insight Sharing program and sharing your stories with our audience. And on behalf of the listener of the program, we want to say thank you.
You're very welcome. I think telling stories to evangelize coaching is really the way to do it. It sometimes sounds like a bit of a hard sell when we go in and go, I'm a coach, I can help you with this. People want to know how you've used it before and what the benefits are to them for having a coaching conversation. So, very happy to talk about my experiences.
Wonderful, wonderful. I know that you are working on your master certification for coaching also, right? How far are you from there?
Yeah, I am not too far into that journey at the moment, other than I got my ICF ACC last year, and then I got my PCC this year. And so the difference between, for those of you you're not sure, ACC you have to do 100 hours of coaching. For your PCC you have to do 500 hours of coaching, and then it's a big jump when you get to do your master certificate as well, which is 2,500 hours of coaching. So I'm continuing to coach, continuing to build up my hours. I'm heading, I think, at the moment towards the 1,000 mark. So a little way to go, but it's organic, it's generic, so it's building as it goes.
Wow. So expecting in about 2 years' time, you're gonna get your master, the MCC then.
Yes, I'm not putting a date on it because I just want to go with the flow, and I know that there are times where I don't get to coach as often as I'd like to, and then there are other times where coaching comes in and it really is a really fruitful time. So I'm not putting a date on it, but yeah, I think in the next probably 2 to 5 years, I would even say, I would love to have that MCC. But as I'm heading towards those 2,500, it's all about the learning and it's all about the growth. And every single conversation that I have with a coachee adds to that. Wow. So it's not just an hour; it's adding to my growth as well.
Wow, and the beautiful thing is the destinations, right? It's the journey along the way. You get there. You get there. If not 2 years, then it's 5 years. But along the way, all of the cumulative of learnings, experience, and the beauty of meeting, the coaches and everything will be so wonderful. So I wish you a peaceful, enjoyable, and pleasant journey to get into the MCC. Okay.
Thank you.
And Claire, in our culture, you've never been to Vietnam before. I wish that one day you travel here and you have new friends. My family, we take you and your family around town to show how beautiful our country is. And for the time being, I'll share with you a little bit about culture. It's gonna be so honor for our audience to have you to introduce about who you are and the works that you do now. Would you do that first?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, my name's Claire Walker. I am the mum of two grown-up children and the grandma to one small school-aged one. I have been married to my husband for 32 years now. So, life has, been longer married than I ever have not been married. Um, and yeah, coaching to me around although I started my official coaching journey about probably 6 years ago, I feel like I've always had a coaching mindset through school and through college and through life in general. I think my ethos and my inner coach has always been there to really make sure that the people that I am talking to are getting the best of where they want to be. So very much that coaching surrounds life in general. And I do use coaching in not every conversation, but in a lot of conversations. And that's not going to be the whole coaching, get somebody from their goal right the way through to where they want to be. It might just be that coaching mindset, and it may just be I ask them a few coaching questions that get them thinking about where they're heading. So coaching to me is it's a skill that everybody should have in their tool bag, but I do think that there is a talent that sits behind it as well. I think there is artistry. Some people are natural coaches, some people can learn to be coaches, but it's like anything where you've got to either put in the effort or you have the natural talent. There will be a sliding scale on where you are with it. But yeah, coaching is something that I just find for my own personal growth is amazing, but then having that ability to watch other people grow as well gives me so much energy and so much passion.
Wow. I have a friend. He's also an MCC from Australia. He's from originally he's from Malaysia, but he moved his family to Australia and been in the coaching fields for 10 years, and I really enjoyed it. And he said the coaching must be a lifestyle, and you've been having that lifestyle when you were young and didn't even know that the coaching practice back then, but you already had it inside of you, right? Allow us to bring you all the way back to when we all young. And when I was young, I wanted to become an astronaut, wearing jumpsuit, and astronaut suit to jump in a different planet, right? And so, Claire, when you were young, what did you dream about about your future, though?
Oh, from being about 3 or 4 years old, I just wanted to be on the stage.
On the
That's
stage.
all I wanted to do was sing and dance and act and do musical theatre. I think that's really what I wanted to do when I was younger. And at the age of 7, I started dance classes, and I could always sing, but I started dance classes then as well, and got into a real lovely group of people who did musical theatre, and we did stage shows. To the point where when I was 16, I moved from a tiny little village in the north of England down to London on my own to go to a theatre school. So for 3 years, I spent my time at the Italia Conti Academy of Theatre Arts, and had an absolutely wonderful time doing what I love doing. So singing and dancing and acting from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. And that was just fantastic. But looking back on that now, much as I loved doing the singing, the dancing, the acting, I was probably a very, very small fish in a very, very large pond. I was in, there were only 60 of us in our year. But of those 60, I wouldn't like to put myself where I was, because there's all the different elements of theatre school. Some is about singing, but of course you could be an opera singer, you could be a jazz singer, you could be a musical theatre singer. You have different levels of that. And then of course dancing, you can have ballet, tap, modern, jazz, contemporary, different levels of that. So I wouldn't ever say that there were levels where I was top of the class, there were levels where I wasn't the top of the class. Certainly ballet. I used to say I was in remedial ballet. I didn't like ballet. So I was somewhere mid-ground. And when anybody who knows anything about the theatre or TV, or, all these programs we see on TV, who can make you a star, or We've Got Britain's Got Talent, or all those pop idol sort of things, you've got to be in the top 1% to make it big. We've all seen bad actors, and they drop off the scale. You've got to be in that top 1%. And so much as I loved being at theatre school and doing what I did, actually what I enjoyed more was helping people progress with their careers. And what I enjoyed more was making sure that the people were okay. I mean, the theatre business is very emotional and quite volatile. So I was always there to make sure that the other people were okay. And I would be the one who would sit with them, or I'd go with them, went to the auditions when they were feeling anxious or nervous, and I would help them along there. And I think that's where my coaching mindset, even from back then, I always recognized that I was probably more useful off stage than I was on stage. Much as I loved on stage, I wasn't a West End sort of performer, but I could have done all the backstage stuff in the West End quite happily, the people stuff. And I think that's where I really recognised that I couldn't also be the selfish person that you sometimes have to be on stage. When you're a theatre actor or a dancer, you're fighting all the time against your friends and your peers. And I couldn't do that. Again, I think it's part of my personal values that come with coaching, about the honesty, the integrity, the fairness, the sharing, the caring. And I think that's where, when I look back now, I really see that's where my coaching mindset was there as well, because I wanted to make sure that other people got to where they wanted to be. But I made sure that I was still happy doing what I was doing, because not only was I seeing other people grow, I was still getting to act and dance and sing. It just happens that I don't do it professionally in the West End. I do it for amateur theatre companies now, and still get the buzz out of it and still love it. But then coaching is much, much bigger than it ever was. So yes, that's where I think, going back to there, that's where my coaching mindset from an early age, I recognised that I am a facilitator and a helper. But I also recognised that I was also looking after myself all the time. I wasn't just setting myself alight to let everybody else be warm. I made sure that actually I was okay.
Claire, in the environment that is highly competitive, where majority of the people are competing for the spot for themselves, right? And it's like dog eat dog environment, if I can put it, in the right way to say. How could you be able to step up, step back, and allow yourself to have the space to helping others at the same time, like having a good care for yourself like that? Can you share the secret besides the core values that you share?
Yeah, I think one of the questions that I ask people very often when I'm coaching them and they say, this is the goal that I want to reach, I will ask them, how much of that goal is in your control?
Ah,
How much are you responsible for that goal? How much can you actually, and it's not trying to dampen their goal in any way, but if I had a colleague here at work who came to me and said, I want to be the CEO by Christmas, I would actually ask them, how achievable is that? How realistic is that? And try and get a measure on it, because if somebody suddenly wants to be president next year, actually, how realistic is that? And if it's not realistic right now, let's see what is realistic. So let's see, that might be a goal in the future, but if you're talking about next year, maybe what you want to do is take a step into whatever it might be. If it's in my company at the moment, is maybe you want to step up a rank and, a grade, and maybe you want to take on more responsibility, become more of a line manager, grow that so that you then grow to become the great CEO, or you get to be the president if that's what you want to be. And so I think, again, it was a self-recognition even back then, before it was, this is all subconscious, before I even had the science behind coaching, or the science behind what was going on, is that I recognized that my potential, probably against other people's potential, when I put it against their talent, I recognized that I had a limit. And it's something that has always been built in with me. Get to the limit where I am happy. Because if I go above that limit and actually I suddenly start feeling uncomfortable because I think I'm going to get found out and I'm not good enough and I'm fully competing to a point where it's exhausting, then that's putting too much energy into something that actually, step it back a level and I could be happy and successful, rather than successful and stressed. And so I think bringing it back to a point where I knew that I was still going to theatre school, and I was singing and I was dancing and I was acting and I was doing, some adverts, and I was doing some helping out some other things in backstage as well. I think at that point I recognised that I knew where my limit was. And therefore, go and do the things that make you happy, rather than the things that I think were out there that I wanted to, head towards, which were never actually going to come true. I was never going to be on the West End, because for every one of me, there's 10 people better. And so I think that's where I really recognised, go and do the thing that makes you happy, rather than the thing that's expected of you, or that's way beyond what you can possibly do.
Wow, wow! Thanks a lot for sharing that. Because in our Eastern culture, there's the one saying is that the hardest thing for knowing is to know ourselves and what we are capable of. Because that's really hard to accept the reality to many people. So it's very wise for you to doing that. Now you are very experienced in the coaching. I'm curious to know, back there, without the science back, without the knowledge, and then being trained properly on coaching. What kind of question did Claire Walker ask, and then ask your friends, your colleagues back then, to help them to grow? Can you share with us?
I think it was the basic questions back then, which when somebody would come to me and be ranting and having a stressful situation and be telling me all about it, a couple of things. I think the coaching mindset of sitting back and actively listening to somebody stepped in, because I would let somebody have their space to tell their story, and I would listen and I would take in that information. And from the information that they gave me, I would ask them whatever the question was that came up for me at that point, which again is the coaching mindset. But the questions would be something like, so what do you want to happen now? So rather than getting into the discussion with them of, oh yeah, that's a terrible thing that they did, no, my goodness, that was awful, and they must really think this about you, I didn't ever get into that. It was never interesting for me to get into the deep dark hole. I always preferred to distance myself from the everything that was going on over here, and step back a little bit and say, okay, that's the situation, and it sounds like it's, have the empathy, and it sounds like it's really hurting you, and it's really causing you some anxiety or some stress or some friction. Where would you prefer to be right now, and how do we get you to there? And those questions used to come up for me, to get people to where they want to be, and what would be good for you right now. This is, a lot of the time, even going through that period when I was at theatre school in London, I was dealing with 16 to 20-year-olds as my friends, which is a stressful time for anybody anywhere. You're going through so many changes, psychologically, physically, mentally, all sorts of changes. And so to be able to stand back from each one of those situations and do it from, I guess, even from the 10,000-foot view, would be able to look down and go, okay, I can see where you are, and it's not serving you right now. It's not good for you. Where would be a better place for you? And those were the questions I used to ask to help people to see that there was an alternative to where they were. They didn't have to stay in that position.
And Claire, in the space for performing art or showbiz, right, people tend to hold off on to themselves because the trust level is pretty low in that space, I think. So why would if you look back into years ago, why would people come to you, Claire, and for advice, for to share their stories so that you can ask questions, you can help them though?
Yeah, I think back there I had, although I was again at a theatre school, very loud, very brash, could be the centre of the room if I wanted to. I also had an appropriate demeanour when somebody would come to me, and they would come to me, I think, because they knew that. I ended up being head girl when I was there, and the reason that they gave me head girl is, and again I hadn't thought about this before, but the principal of Contis said to me, because you see what people need before they know what they need. So she'd seen that in me. And so if she'd seen it, it's potentially other people had seen it as well. I didn't know that. It was just what I did. It was just, I would say to people, would it be helpful if we went for a walk right now? And they'd go, yeah, I need to go and do that. So I would see what they needed before they needed it. It wasn't a conscious thing that I used to do, but it was sometimes having that ability to get someone to step out of the current situation and look from either a different perspective or a new perspective.
Wow, you've been having all the inner qualities to become a great coach, right? And you only get into the coaching space 6 years ago. So tell us what happened between there and to 6 years before 6 years ago. What was the journey that you had though?
Yeah, so came out of Italia Contis, went to work for a couple of years, and then re-met my now husband, who we dated when we were 13 and 14. We'd known each other longer. We've known each other since we were about 9 or 10 years old. And so at the age when I went off down to London, he went and joined the British Army. And so we went in our different ways at that point anyway. And then just before my 21st birthday, because we went to school together, we lived in villages which were very close to each other. And we were in the pub out for a drink on New Year's Eve. And we just bumped into each other and said, do you fancy going for a drink this week? And we did. And 6 months later, we were engaged. And probably 15 months after that, we were married. But one of the reasons that we got married so quickly was because he was in the army, which meant that we got a house straight away. We didn't have to save up for a house. And so, yeah, back in 1991, we got married. And from there, we moved around Germany and the UK and went to various different places. He did various different tours, had our 2 children. So I would move, obviously, wherever his job was, wherever his role was, I would move with him. And so I've been an IT technician in schools. I've been a playgroup leader, mainly in those sort of admin support roles right the way through, though. But I also worked for something that was called the Villages Youth Project. So I was a youth worker for a little while as well. And again, that's where the coaching came in, because I was dealing with children, with young adults who were aged probably between, I think, 10 and 21. And they were children who were from difficult backgrounds and were at risk. And they were either at risk from abusing or from being physically abused, or there was something in their life that was causing issues that, they were quite fragile, but they were quite fragile that had to be very tough.
No.
So that was where I would sit and have conversations with them. And again, it was where my coaching mindset would come in, where I could distance myself enough from them, but still have the empathy to let them feel like they weren't on their own and that they were trustworthy and that they were good people and they weren't broken. But let's get you from where you are now to where you want to be, and let's see how we do that. Changing their mindsets, giving them new perspectives. Even we had a great project within that village project where they all lived was in the middle of a very, very affluent district. And so their small housing estate, which was very run down, was surrounded by houses, big houses with very expensive cars on the driveways. And so there was automatically a feeling of us versus them. So what we did was bring the two groups together so that they got the perspective from the other side. And it changed the way that community, and it became one community, worked together. And that was just by allowing them and facilitating conversations between those two groups. And the respect that they suddenly had for each other completely rose, to the point actually where the local police rang our project and said, "What are you doing?" And we said, "Well, we're getting these people to talk to each other." And they said, "Well, keep doing it because there's no crime at the moment." And they've stopped doing whatever they were doing.
Wow.
So, those kids who were leaning against cars, or they were, graffitiing on people's fence posts, suddenly recognized that these are just people who just have a different life to me, but doesn't mean that they're good or bad or different. And the other side of it came back to go, these are people who just have a different life to me. It doesn't mean that they're good or they're bad. We're just people. And so they got to work. But that, again, was very much done through that coaching mindset of recognizing people's personal values, recognizing who they wanted to be with each other. This wasn't, what do we want to do? Well, we want you to do that, and we want to do that. It was very much about, who do you want to be with each other? And one side wanted to be respected, and the other side wanted to be respectful by the end of it. And actually, it wasn't the way around that you would have thought about it. It was the people from the poorer side who wanted to be respected, and then the people from the more affluent side who decided, yeah, we want to be more respectful towards these people who we've looked down on for such a long time. And that group came together, and it's probably one of the proudest things, I think, in a work context that I've probably done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Claire, earlier you said that you came from a small village in the north of England, right? And the young Claire, when you were young, did you ever thought that you're gonna travel the world and live in different country, doing different kind of works like that?
No,
No.
I don't think that I ever did. And I think this is, again, comes down to my inner being of being happy wherever I am.
Ah.
So I've never had the aspirations to go and do, and it doesn't mean that I'm not ambitious in some things, but I will always be happy wherever I am, and I will always make the best of wherever I am. And so when we were living in Germany in the army, I made the best of that, and made sure that my kids were happy, and made sure that there was a home built for them, and they were okay. When my husband was out in, with the British Army, and he was working abroad, and he was away for 6 or 9 months at a time, it was hard, but I made sure that we were all happy. So we made sure that everything was okay. And even when the hardest things happen, I will always try and make sure that we see the bright side of it, or we see the opportunity in it, or we learn from it. So whatever happens in life, it happens for a reason. And it doesn't happen to you, it just happens around you. The fact is, it happens.
Wow.
And quite often you can't stop it. And so therefore, if you can't stop it and you don't have control over it, you have that choice. You can either go, this is awful, and oh, this is happening to me, and isn't it dreadful? Or you can say, okay, this is happening. How do we make the best out of this? And how do we make sure that we stay heads above the water level and still keep a home-based feeling of, I'm okay?
Claire, you was not a coach back then, right? So we want to learn the secrets from you. How did you coach yourself through, to build that mindset up though? That's very positive, very powerful. How did you do that to yourself?
Yeah, I think it comes very much from it. I mentioned it there, home base. And home base being, if you imagine a cross on a chart,
Yeah.
where you can have positive feelings and negative feelings. Now, that doesn't mean good and bad emotions. It doesn't mean that grief is bad. It doesn't mean that happiness is positive. But if you have something that makes you feel positive, something that makes you feel negative. And then on going acrossways, you have high emotion and low emotion. High energy and low energy. Now, if you imagine that as being a crossroads, you can start plotting onto there how you're feeling today. So like now, I'm doing this with you. Feeling I have at the moment, and this is really good to recognize how you're feeling at any given time, and I think this really helps. Feeling I'm feeling at the moment is probably a little bit nervous in there. I can just feel this because I'm, doing a talk about me, which is never really my most comfortable spot. But I'm also very happy because I'm talking about coaching, and I will always be happy talking about coaching. So my nervous anxiety, happy anxiety, is going to be sitting. It's a positive feeling, and nervousness can be a negative feeling, but this is a positive feeling, and it's heading towards the happiness. So if you drew that on a piece of paper, I'd be in that top right quadrant somewhere. Okay. But you can also imagine if I had just lost somebody, that I could be full of grief. And so I could be down at that very low energy and feeling very, very negative. And that grief is down there. And so what do I want to do with it? And where does that grief need to sit? And where does it need to move to as well? Now, I'm not saying you have to get grief back to home base, which is the cross in the middle where everything's okay. That's your happy, contented place. What I'm saying is recognizing that grief is down there and there is a place for it and it's okay. That's fine, because I know there's other places on the chart that I will get to at some other point. But that grief is there, it's okay, it can sit there, and I can sit with that for quite a long time because I know at some point it will move. So the realization that nothing is permanent and things do change. It's like the passing clouds, they're transient, they're going to come past at some point and the sun will come back out again. And having that metaphor or that mindset that says, wherever I am in my emotions, at some point I will get back to home base, then that I think is where I know that I can get to. And I think sometimes, if you know that you've got grief within you, but you've got to go and do something, it's okay to say, the grief is sitting there, I completely get it, but while I need to go and do this job for the next 10 or 15 minutes, let me just park that grief and I will come back to it. It's almost nurturing your feelings. Wow. It's letting your feelings know that they're part of you. I mean, this is the thing about feelings. We quite often say when we get anxiety or nervous or fear, people say it's the fight or flight. Well, what's the point in that? Because if you have fear or anxiety and you decide that you're going to fight it, it's in you. It's your feeling. You own it. And therefore, you're fighting yourself. Wow. There's no point. That's a waste of energy. If you decide you're going to flight it, same principle. It's in you. It's yours. You own it. If you're going to flight it, then it's running with you because it's with you. Yep. So there's a third option, which is make it right. Befriend it. So if you can befriend your feelings and go, okay, right now I'm feeling anxious. What is it that the anxiety is telling me? Okay, it's telling me that there's something happening right now that I just need to be alert. I need to be aware, like now at the moment. That little bit of anxiety I've got in me, I just need to be alert that my front door's not going to ring, ring, or my phone's not going to ring. That's why I've got my phone put away somewhere. That little bit of anxiety saying, just make sure I'm listening to the questions and being really present with you right now, because that's what I need to do. So I've gone, right, my anxiety is telling me that I need to be really alert. What will I do? Okay, I need to be really alert. Okay. In the same way that grief is telling you there's a hole in my life right now that I don't know how I'm going to fill. How am I going to ever fill that hole? And as they say, grief is love with nowhere to go. So if grief is love with nowhere to go, where do I need to find to channel that love that I now have that isn't going to the person who's no longer here, or whatever it is that's then missing from your life? So recognizing those feelings that this is how I'm feeling today. And again, looking back on my life, I can think, I used to know some mornings where I used to wake up going, I don't feel too good today. Why not? What's the feeling? Oh, I know what it is. Okay, that's the feeling that I'm having right now. Why am I having that? Because that's happening later today. Right, it's happening at 2 o'clock. It might be the dentist. So I wake up in the morning and my subconscious has gone, pa-ding, dentist, and my brain's gone, out like the dentist. Now I've gone, okay, that's at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I've got to get from 8 o'clock this morning to 2 o'clock this afternoon. Do I want to have this feeling until 5 minutes before I go to the dentist? No, because it's a waste of energy and it's just going to be a negative feeling. Why would I want that? So why don't I get from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1:45, then let's worry about the dentist. And it would almost be I would delay my feelings sometimes. Doesn't mean that they weren't there. It just means that I would say, just park that, because otherwise you're wasting energy on it.
Wow.
So let's have a different feeling for now. And to tell you a story about this that I had with one of my coachees, it was a lovely, lovely story, where he said to me one day, he came onto a coaching call on a Monday, and I said, how are you doing? He said, I'm feeling really angry. Oh. And I said, really? Why? What's going on? And he said, oh, this thing happened at the weekend, and I got really, really angry with it. And I said, and so what's happened? Yeah, I've been really, really all weekend. And I said, and how did that anger feel to you? And you're still angry now. How's it feeling? Horrible. I just feel like tight. And I said, okay, tell me if that anger had been a pair of shoes that was giving you a blister in the way that this anger's hurting you and rubbing against you. If it was being a pair of shoes that were giving you a blister, what would you have done? Instead of taken them off. And what would you have put on instead? I'd have put my slippers on because they're cozy and warm and I would have felt better. And I said, all right, so what happens when you put your slippers on? And he went, oh, that's better. And by changing his thought like that, of taking off his angry boots that were hurting him and changing his thought to being a pair of slippers, he changed his demeanor, his body, his chemicals, his physiology changed like that because he thought a different thought. And so I said, okay, so when you go to work tomorrow, which shoes do you want to put on? And he said, yeah, I'll put my work shoes on, metaphorically, because I need to be businesslike and I need to stand up straight and I need to give a presentation. Brilliant. When you go out the weekend, which shoes are you going to put on? He goes, yeah, I'll put my fun shoes on because I'm going to go out with my friends and I'm going to be fun. Excellent. And so we had this metaphorical thing where he can put on whichever shoes he chooses to in the morning. So I said, when you get up tomorrow morning, which shoes do you want to put on? And he now names them his happy shoes, his, strict shoes, his whatever it is that he's doing. But he has any pair of shoes that he might ever need in his head already. It's his own shoe shop. Wow. It's in there. And he owns every pair of shoes. And he chooses now how he wants to be. And that goes back to that I mentioned earlier. Who do you want to be? Today I want to be happy. Today I want to be brave. Today I want to be confident. Because it was one of the questions you asked me earlier about how did the Clare Walker back then get into that mindset or get into that coaching framework. It's because I used to choose who I wanted to be that day.
Beautiful.
So today I want to be confident.
Wow, beautiful. And you know what? The story that the metaphor that you talk to the coachee, right? It's gonna stick with him forever to his life. He's gonna use it and echo to everyone that he got an interaction with because it works for him. It's gonna work for everybody. And earlier you mentioned one thing that I'm very very curious is parking the emotion. All right. So you say if you meet the dentist at 2 o'clock and you meet anxiety from 8 o'clock, right? So it's a waste of 6 hours there. Worry about something that's not going to happen until 2 a.m. right? 2 p.m. So but parking emotion is extremely hard for so many people because a lot of us carry the emotion in our bag in front of us everywhere we go, right? Is there a secret that you can advise us so that we can practice to park our emotions where it should supposed to be so that we can focus on something else?
Yeah, absolutely. There are two things that I will talk to you about. I was just writing down there because I do this. I'll go, there's two things I want to tell you about, and I say the first one and then I go, I can't remember what the second one was, so I've written them down. So number one, emotions are a second part of a process. So The only way that you ever get an emotion is because you've had a thought. You have a thought, you then have an emotion or a feeling, and from that feeling or emotion there will be an action. It can only ever go in that order. You can't possibly do something without having a feeling before it and a thought before that. Sometimes you will think that you feel something and then think, oh, there was a thought. Can't possibly go in that order. It has to go thought, feeling, action. Now, the thing about emotions, they last about 6 seconds.
Oh.
The longest emotion that you will ever get is fear or fright. And that's where, you're walking along and somebody jumps out and goes, boom! And you go, oh my God, that's good. The only reason that it lasts so long is because adrenaline comes out of your brain, and the chemical surges through your body. And from that chemical release through to it leaving your body is about 90 seconds. That's the longest an emotion can ever last. Most emotions will only last a few seconds, 5 or 6 seconds. So imagine that. Imagine that you're walking down a street and you see a cat or a dog run towards the road, and you hear the car coming towards it. The emotion you have at that point is like, oh no, fear. And then the dog runs out the other side of the car and off he goes up the street. And you go, oh, that emotion, that quickly. Really can change that quickly. So that is because you went, thought was, the dog's going to get run over. The thought was, oh, the dog's absolutely fine. Those two emotions change that, and that is how fast your emotions change in your body. So the only reason that you will have an emotion for anything more than those 6 seconds is because you keep thinking about it. So if I go, I've got the dentist coming up. I wonder if he's going to drill my teeth today. I wonder if I need a fill-in. I might need a fill-in. I don't know, because if I need it, I'm going to have to sit in that chair, aren't I? And it's got that horrible smell, and he's going to lay me right the way back, and he's going to do... My thoughts are like rain clouds right now if I do that. And those rain clouds, I'm giving them energy. They're just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and become a massive, massive rain cloud that's causing a black cloud. There's going to be thunder and lightning if I carry on like that. But actually, if I just go, I've got the dentist, but it's at 2:00. Which other cloud do we want here at now? Well, before I get to the dentist this morning, I've got other stuff that I need to get through. So I can go and do the stuff that makes me happy for the next few hours. Okay, I might want to go to work, but while I'm going to work, why don't I listen to my favourite podcast? Because that will make me happy. Why don't I listen to my favourite piece of music? Why don't I call a friend and just say, I could do with cheering up a little bit. Can you just tell me, tell me a joke or tell me something funny. Change your mood, change your thought, get somebody to tell you a story, go and read something, look at something, do something different. That thought will pop back in again that goes, oh, it's 10:00 now, there's only 4 hours to go. Yeah, there's 4 hours. Do I want to spend 4 hours feeling anxious, or do I want to spend 3.5 hours feeling okay and that last half hour? Because again, why would you want to do that? So you can go through that whole process of, if you can change your thought, you can change your emotion about it.
So our
There's
thought,
a great, it was, yeah.
So our thought feeds our emotion, and that keep the 6 seconds lasting longer, become hours, become days, become months, right? Yeah.
Because you're thinking about it. You're in control. You're not in control of your thoughts, because we can't stop our thoughts. But what we can do is choose what we do with those thoughts. And there's a great quote that was from Viktor Frankl that says, between stimulus and response, there is choice. So sometimes, the man jumping out on you, there isn't choice, because he's jumped out and it's so quick that you've gone, and that adrenaline has started flowing. But what there is between stimulus, my thought going, you got the dentist at 2:00, and the response of my body going, I've got choice. I've got that thought. But it's not till 2:00. So don't have that emotion, because that's the reaction. So being able to put that gap in between is great. And we do this with, emails come into us. Email from my boss. My initial reaction is, oh my goodness, what do they want? Well, actually, that's your stimulus, the email coming in, and my response is, oh my goodness, what do they want? What are they going to ask me to do now? No, the email comes in, and my choice is, there's an email from my boss. I wonder what they want. And I'll put curiosity in there instead. because I haven't yet read the email. I don't know what it's about. Making up my own story if I do that. So between the stimulus and the response, there is choice. And if you can build that into various different things, somebody gives you feedback, let it land in a bowl in the middle of the table before it hits you in the chest and goes, oh, did you just say that to me? No. Okay, bowl in the middle of the table. Is that true? Can we discuss it a little bit more? Can we unpick what you just said so that I understand and I can learn from this? There's your response, not the bit in the middle. So be able to do that with that emotion and being able to, I say, park those emotions, or at least be able to understand where they're coming from and put them to one side for a little while is helpful, is really helpful. And then the second thing, and I'm glad I wrote it down, is an acronym that we use that's called RAIN, which comes from the rain clouds again. It's, it's weather metaphors in coaching are huge. People talk about, it feels cold, or, it's dark and gloomy right now. People use metaphors for coaching through weather. And rain is one that we use. And if you can do that, people listening to the story might be able to do it now. Number one is recognize what the feeling is that you're feeling right now. So as I said before, I was feeling that nervous anxiety. Okay, so that's what it is. That's what that little vibration is in my chest right now that I can feel, that's making me, just bounce a little bit. Okay, it's a bit of nervous anxiety. That's all it is. It's excitement as well. Okay, so I'll recognize it. Just by recognizing it and naming it can be enough sometimes to go, okay, that's what it is that I'm feeling. Okay, that's all right. The second thing is to allow it and accept it. Okay, the A is the allow. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to allow that to be there because it's there. I'm talking to you. I'm on the screen. I'm talking about me, as I say. Yeah, that's why I'm feeling a little bit nervous and excited. I'm also talking about coaching, which always gets me excited. People always say, gosh, you're so passionate about this. Yeah, I love it. And so that's what's in there. So throw that one in there. Actually, is that what I'm feeling right now? Is it nervousness or is it passion I'm feeling right now? There you go. There's a learning for me. It may be the passion that I'm feeling that's going, oh, this is brilliant. It may be that. And then the I is to investigate it, which is what I did. I just did that. Is it really anxiety and nervousness that I'm feeling, or is it excitement and passion? Gosh, how different is that? Nervous anxiety, on that cross I was talking about earlier, is potentially a negative feeling. Nervous anxiety, it could be, oh, I don't want to do this. I could have 1 o'clock gone, nah, don't want to do this anymore. Sent you a cancellation. No. Allowing that, so that has now become passion and excitement is now on that upscale. It's heading towards that positive, and also it's getting, you can hear me, I'm getting higher energy from this as well. So being able to investigate what that feeling is really, really important. And then the N is for nurture it. So nurture that feeling. And if it is one that needs some attention, give it the attention that it needs. So if I'm saying, I've got this feeling right now and it's nervous attention, it's nervous excitement, and what does it need from me? What have I done before that helps here? I know, I just need to breathe. Just remember to breathe. So let's just do I already feel better for just doing that. For 1 breath in and 1 breath out. That has already gone, my spiky excitement, nervous anxiety, passion has just done that. From breathing, it just went. And now it's doing that, but it's not doing that. It's doing that now. And just by doing that, all that I did then was go through, recognize it, which is your R, acknowledge and allow it, which is your A, investigate it, which is your I, and nurture it, which is your N.
Wow. And
that can again be enough with a 10 or 20 second just think about rain. I feel a lot calmer now. Just from myself, self-coached myself now into breathing in and out. And that's all it took.
Wow.
To bring my emotion back to home base, which is what I talked about earlier.
And Claire, it's so good to see all the dots connected backwards. And then now, over the past 6 years, you've been doing the love of your life, the works in the coaching, right? And tell us how that happened, for you to actually entering onto the coaching space.
So I started working, I work for Vodafone, and I started working with Vodafone back in 2011. first as a managed service, then I moved into Group Learning and Development, and I then worked in the global leadership department. And when I was in the learning and development, I used to look after all the leadership training and all the logistics, and I used to make sure everybody knew which course they were on, how to get there, joining instructions, got fed, watered, feedback, everything that went along with it. And so I said to my line manager at one day, I'm sending everybody out on these courses, but I've never been on one of them, and I think it would be really good so that I can promote the courses to these leaders if I can sit through it and learn what the courses are about. And so I went on one of the leadership courses, and one module in that, which was on a Wednesday afternoon for about an hour and a half, was going through the GROW model, the Sir John Whitmore's GROW model. For those who don't know it, it's the G is your goal, R your reality, O is your what are your options, and W is the what will we do next. And we went through that, and it was like an epiphany for me. We did this GROW model. We were allowed to then go and practice it in trios for half an hour or whatever it was. And I just felt like I had landed. I just felt like I had found my place. And I cannot describe what that was like. I think having done all that theatre stuff, which I loved and it was brilliant, that was all. It felt very almost superficial. I was doing it and it was there. Oh my goodness, when I learnt the GROW model and I did that practice trio, that very first one, I just felt like I was home, and it felt comfortable, and I thought, this is what it's all been about. I found my place. And so from doing the GROW model on that day, I then started building out. So I set up sessions so that we went and did more of those trio practices so that I could practice coaching more and more. I came home and I did it with my kids. I told them what I was doing, but I used it with my kids. I then started using it in conversations. From there on, I then went and did a course that was about the 3 principles, which is, it's about that thought, that feeling, and that action. It's all centers around that. And an absolutely amazing course that I did that really solidified my place on home base. I know that I do move off it when I have those emotions, but it allows me to come back into that home base. So I went and did that. Did more and more offline coaching, where I was coaching people that I knew. And then I was very, very fortunate a few years ago that I'd obviously been growing this and growing a coaching community within Vodafone as well, and doing some training for what we called our coaching champions. I was fortunate enough to work with some really, really great facilitators on that. And be able to facilitate courses as well. And as that grew, I then asked my then line manager, is there a possibility that I could go and get a qualification with this? And they said yes. And I was very fortunate that they sponsored me to do my ICF PCC qualification. And so through that, I got my 100 hours of coaching. And then in September of last year, through recognition of coaching for our seniors in Vodafone, they very much recognise that coaching has immense benefits for companies. We needed to really move away from that leadership telling you what to do to leaderships asking you how you wanted to do it and getting buy-in from other employees and their direct reports. And so last September, they asked me if I would set up a global coaching program in Vodafone. And so what I have done over the last almost 18 months now, 15 to 18 months, is set up what I call my 4 pillars. We ran a great big request for quotation, RFP process, request for proposal process, where we had 19 different coaching companies come to us and got it down to one coaching company that we use for our external coaching. So we set up that. We also set up our internal coaching. So it means that anybody in Vodafone can be coached by one of our internal certified coaches. I'm very fortunate that in Vodafone, a lot of people are like me and have invested their own time and money into becoming certified and credential coaches. And I have a whole pool of, we have 100 people who are verified credential coaches who are going to be coaching their colleagues throughout all markets, so globally, in Vodafone, which is just incredible. So to enable us to do that, we are launching our own platform that will match people together and then also be able to to help them to make sure that they know what the goals are, what the actions are within those platforms as well. So they'll be able to do that in a very secure and confidential environment for them. We've got everything nailed down on a security and cyber space from there. And so they will be doing that. And then the other pillars that we have in there as well, of course, we've got a big website that allows people, whether you want to be a coach, be coached, or just learn more about coaching, it allows you to go in and find resources and find this link to our Coach Match platform. It tells you how you can become a coach. I've done podcasts on there. We've got this great big program going on that the big launch for it actually is at the end of November, but it's taken that long to put it all together. But what an amazing resource we will have available for the 90,000 people that we have in this company.
Wow.
So it's amazing. On top of that, of course, doing my other coaching as well, my external coaching through my own company. So yes, it's
wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations for a phenomenal growth in the space of coaching, especially in the past, like 2 years, right? And now you're leading the coaching initiative for 90,000 people within the Vodafone. I'm curious about when you build the internal coaching program platform for your internal team, but you're also using the external vendor for that. From that 18 companies down to one, what's a company that you decided to onboard to be part of your journey, Claire?
Yeah, we have a company that could globally serve all of the senior leaders that we needed. So through that process, we looked at all the different languages that they could use, that all the different platforms that they could use, and just make sure that the coaches that they were offering to us were absolutely of the level and the qualifications that we needed them to be for all of our leaders as well. So yeah, really happy that we have them on board with us.
Is that okay? We can have the names so that we can learn about their platform also.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm not breaking any confidences telling you. We work with a company that's called Ezra, which is part of LHH Penna.
Ezra, the owner is Nick, right? So Nick is a
Yes.
Yeah. I know Nick. So I'm very close, familiar with Ezra platform also. Wise choice. Hey Claire, I have two questions that I want to ask you before we end the conversation today. And earlier you say that our thought, create our emotions. Now, our emotion will lead to our actions, right? So the thinking is very important. And my wife and I has been in the quest to help people to improve their ability to think. And because we believe that our ability to think these days actually is diminishing, it's not increasing at all. And so you're an expert on that. You've been working with amazing people around the world who are really, really, really good at thinking. So we have a question for you, Claire. How have you been helping yourself to expand your ability to think?
Is by giving myself time to do so. And you're absolutely right. We are losing the ability to think for ourselves. And I noticed this. I regularly travel down the motorway to Manchester. And every time I go down there, I put the sat nav on. And if you ask me to drive there now without the sat nav, I don't know that I could get the right junction and turn off. And I do it regularly. And I still rely on my sat nav. So I don't think for myself when I do that anymore. We have so many apps on our phones that tell us what we need to know. They give us, our mobile. I was going to say the name of the thing that's sat in the corner of my kitchen at the moment, and I don't want to because she'll turn on and speak to me. But all we ever have to do is say, I had a builder here a couple of days ago, and he was trying to work out the floor space that we needed for tiles. And he just said to her, so what's 1.7 times 3.4? And she gave him the answer. And I thought, you didn't even have to use maths then. You just had to ask your voice-controlled unit in the corner, and she gave you the answer. Right. You don't think anymore. And so, absolutely, we don't do that thinking. So I think there's a lot of things that, not just that educational thinking where you learn, and you keep remembering how to do all of those soft skill stuff, but also having that time, like I did the rain analogy before, and walk through that, is just giving myself those 30 seconds that probably took me, or giving myself 5 minutes at the end of the day, or just making sure that I schedule time in my diary that is time for me to think. And that's really what you need to be able to do, is whether you go out for a walk, and I do a lot of walking, whether you go out for a walk, whether you just sit quietly, whether it's on the bus on the way home, whatever it is and wherever you are, just ring fence for yourself as often as you possibly can time to think.
Wow, schedule time to think. Wonderful. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Claire. Because after we interview, like earlier that I said, you are the 450 person that joining the show, right? And so we start to break down the word thinking into acronym. And the first T is actually time, because a lot of great thinkers, they schedule time in their dailies for them to really think about the works that they do, the things that are happening around them, and observe, try to give themselves a space and time for thinking. So thanks for sharing that, Claire. All right. My last question for you today is about the future. So we knew you when you were young, you wanted to perform, and on the stage, right? Dancing, singing, dancing, and acting. And I know that you are also doing it now through the coaching. There's a lot of, dancing, a lot of, like singing and acting also in there with your coaches, right? To make it the conversation become more connected, become more meaningful for a lot of them. And I will always remember the story that you talked to your coaches sharing the shoes, about the shoe metaphor. I will tell my children tonight. We want to head into the future a little bit, Claire. Is there anything that exciting you are working on and you want to share with us now so we can celebrate with you in advance?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so I am continuing at the moment to build the coaching program, and that is going to be ongoing. But going forward, my intention is that in a few years' time, when I start thinking about retirement, is that I have my company set up and fully flourishing by that. I have a company that's called coachingconversation.co.uk, which if you want to go and find it on the web, you will be able to. And so I want to grow that company more and more. But the thing that I'm also doing at the moment, I'm investing in my own time, is I'm doing a group coaching certification through the ICF as well at the moment. And so group coaching is going to be something that I really want to invest time in going forward as well, so that people can live a less frictious and more harmonious life. So very much keeping coaching and being able to do it is the thing that I love doing. They always say, if you find something you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. So to be able to continue doing this into, through my working life and into when my semi-retirement, retirement and onwards, I don't ever want to stop coaching people because they get so much from it. They really do, other people grow. And from that, I get energy. And therefore it keeps me young, keeps me young, keeps me energized, keeps me focused, but it keeps me happy. And I think that, if you said, what's the one thing that I want from the future, it would be to be happy.
Wow.
Coaching gives me that.
Wow. And I want you to be happy also. I know that you are doing a lot of coaching right now, which means that you are at the very good stage of happiness, right? Please stay in there as long as you would love to do, and because the works that you are doing when you're happy, you're gonna bring a lot of great result for the coaches and the people you've been interact with. All right. And so Claire, I thank you for spending your time joining our show and sharing your amazing stories with us. And I'm so happy that I had a chance to meet you. I will also tell Nick at Ezra about how amazing the world is, so small like this, right? Claire, get your MCC as soon as you can, but enjoy the journey, like you say, and stay happy. If you ever travel to this part of the world, now you have a new friend, new family here to wait for you and welcome you. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. It's the hour has flown past way too fast.
I know.
But yeah, I really have. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
It's been wonderful to no longer nervous, right?
Yeah, no, not at all. Very relaxed now.
Okay, Claire, you have a wonderful day and enjoy the weekend ahead. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye for now.